Hello and welcome. Today is going to be a cosplay tutorial guide on the Yuri on Ice cosplays premiering later this year at Phoenix Comic-Con and Anime Expo. This is intended not necessarily as a one-stop solution, nor a singular video that'll be covering it. This will be done more like a vlog series over the span of the development of the cosplay because I am not a professional. I am doing this all learning each step of the way, so thought maybe others might be interested in the same. So today, the first step that's going to be done is dyeing. Cutting has already been done. The pattern that I used, I will leave in the description below. It's not perfect, so I had to modify some portions of the pattern to make it work. So step one, we're going to end up washing the material that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and get that out and get it clean. Alright, so here's the material that we are working with. This is actually organza, so it's a nice slightly stretchy material, but it also has sheen to it without having glitter, which I always appreciate. It's also a pretty thick mesh, and the color looks nice overall and will show up on top of darker fabrics. So we're going to turn it on just to cool, and just get the fabric wet. This is so the dye will actually hold onto it, as this is polyester, so I had to take dye more fabric dye. Alright, so now with this wet, we're going to set it aside to get ready for dyeing. Alright, so here we are now in the kitchen. We needed a bowl large enough to dye the fabric in. So we're going to have portions of the fabric submerged, which we need the large part in the back, and one of the under portions of the sleeve getting fully dyed. And then we needed enough space to actually dip the front portions of the jacket into and out of to get a gradient. So I needed to buy a very large bowl. I didn't want to use what we had in terms of cooking, so I went out to Walmart, bought this for about $20. This is a tamale/seafood steamer, so most local Walmarts will carry this product. Go by, grab it. It's going to be very simple for at least allowing you to do the front part, because that's the only complex part of this cosplay as a whole. Fill it up most of the way with water. Then you're going to set it to a medium-high heat because you need to keep the water somewhere roughly between 180 and 210 degrees. That's because specifically this product here, this is Rit Dye-More, this is going to be used for synthetic fabrics, which we have a polyester organza. So it doesn't dye with the usual fabric dyes, so keep that in mind if you're going to Joann's, Michael's, wherever you might be going for your art supplies. Check and make sure that it does say that it works on synthetic fabrics, because some do not work well on polyester, because it's a very hard material to dye. So for this, we're going to need to have enough water. It says to double the dye for polyester. I have not tried it yet. We're going to do just one and see where we get to. So heat it up, and we're going to cut to when I at least have the water heated up, so that way I can show you what we're going to do next. Alright, I believe we're right around the temperature that we need to be. There's some slight bubbling around the edges of this, but it's not boiling, because we're trying to keep it just below boiling point. So now we are going to add our dye. For this we're using a sapphire blue, which hopefully is a darker blue than what we're using. That way we can get that appearance of having a nice dark blue front and back to this jacket. Alright, the important thing to keep in mind is this is dye. So you need to be careful, don't want to get it on your fingers. You should be using gloves. I'm using tongs, it recommends gloves. Follow the instructions. Alright, so now we've added the dye. Conveniently have some on my fingers. I'm just going to stir this around for a moment. Then we're going to add in the fabric now. So for the things that you're going to be submerging, of course, again, this is your back piece, as well as your underarm on the left arm. So we're going to place this down at the bottom of this liquid. Now that we have that submerged and all the air bubbles out, I have taken our front portion here and attached it to some pants hangers. Just going to be the easiest way for me to hold on to it over the span of the next 30 minutes or so while I'm dipping it in and out of this dye. So you're going to place the bottom in. I want to go about halfway up and then pull it back out. Just lightly dipping in and out. And you're going to continue this for about 30 minutes. Alright, we are here near the end of the dyeing process, and I just wanted to mention a few notes of things that I found during the dyeing process that could be useful to you. One, you'll notice that this hanger is sitting here. Why? Well, what ended up happening is when I would pull the fabric out, at least while I was using it, the fabric would rub the edges and then leave dye sitting there on the edges. It was touching up on the fabric and I didn't want to have to worry about removing it, which you can easily with a wet paper towel. So keep a wet paper towel handy. You'll see this is what I've been using. Just, you can wipe it right off before it starts to actually dye the fabric. The second reason that it's sitting here though is that I am able to rest the fabric here, keeping it from touching the edges of the actual pot, and soak the bottom portion, because I need the bottom portion to be as dark as the back of the fabric. That way it matches and it stays cohesive to at least the image that we're trying to work with. Of course, the source image that I'm using for this, I will leave a link down in the description minimally, but I'll see if I can fit it somewhere on screen at the moment. I'm using Viktor as the guide for this just because the official artwork for him is much more detailed that came out online. And we're using the same base overall. Of course, we're going to be using the duet version, so black shirt, silver links instead. But overall, it allowed me to, rest the fabric, have it soak. You can see that the gradient does exist here. And it seems to be working quite well. We have 1 minute left, so I'm going to cut, because the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be washing off the fabric to get the dye off. Definitely you should be wearing gloves for this. I'm just going to be using a pair of tongs, but highly, highly recommend that you have a pair of rubber gloves or some sort of gloves that you can use that are not fabric, to at least wash the fabric and get all the excess dye off of. Alright, so we are at the sink now. We're just going to rinse this off until the water runs clear, and then we will be able just to put it to the side and let it rest, and I'll be doing the same with the other two pieces here. Alright, so we are done washing. It is all run clear. Next thing we're going to do is just let it dry, and then we're going to take a look and see if the shine is preserved on this, and give you at least a look of what the finished product is going to be like. Alright, so it's time for the final result here after dyeing. It's going to be a little bit challenging to see the colors, especially on the gradient ones. So here we have the gradient. I'm going to try and hold it up against the background so at least it's visible. It actually looks very nice. Obviously I'm wearing blue, this doesn't help at all, but the sheen of the fabric is still intact, which is great. The only thing to note is that it did cause some fraying here around the edges, so I'll have to be cutting down the fabric. Fortunately, I ended up picking a size that was somewhat larger, and since I did the full front vest, which we will be clipping down because the vest doesn't actually go all the way to the middle, it's nothing to worry about with this pattern, but if you're trying to keep exact to the fabric, that's what you should keep in mind. So we have one of the sleeves here, since we only needed one color in the back. Overall looks great, minimal warping here, so nothing too crazy. There's just a little bit of a sway. Again, might not be possible to see that. And here is our back piece. So overall, looks great. We'll have to be cutting down the bottom and whatnot more in tailoring, but that contrasts to our earlier fabric color. So you can see quite a difference there. But overall, it's fantastic. The product seems to do exactly what it needs to do. So if you're trying to work on dyeing, it seems like that's one of the best solutions out there. So if you have any other questions, leave it down in the comment section below, let me know. The next episode is going to be on getting at least some of the basic fitting done with basting, temporary stitching, and at least getting the outfit placed together for the rest of the stitching to go together, because we have more than just this fabric to deal with decals and as well as chains across the front. So stay tuned next week and let's see where it goes. Will this even focus? Focus on me. Hopefully not blurry this time. I don't even know if this is going to be visible. All nicely frayed from the... We'll be cutting that down.